Once you have your eye attached into your backing here, I scored, slipped, and smoothed it right here, you're ready to cut out pieces to attach onto your dragon eye to make it three-dimensional. So I have these two pieces here, and I am going to work on attaching them on so that they survive a firing. So a firing is a baking. We want to make sure that these pieces bake onto the surface here, okay, when they're fired in the kiln. And so the way to do that is by scoring, slipping, and smoothing your clay, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add my score marks. You can use your needle tool. You can really use any tool. The fork works really well with this, which I don't have on hand. So think of the score marks as Velcro. So you want to add it to one side, and you also want to add it to the area where you're attaching it. Just like that. From there, you're going to add a little bit of water to both sides. Real Slip is a clay water mixture. We use water in here. And the goal is to just add a little bit of wetness just in preparing for attaching. Okay. I am going to, at this point, very gently press this on here. Okay. And at this point, it is not attached. Okay. So see how there is a line that separates one piece of clay from the other? I'm going to make sure that I take one of my clay tools that has, I like to use sometimes this smaller side here or even this larger side, and pull clay right over that seam. Okay, so I'm pulling it down and out, down and out, down and out, all the way around. And you'll see that these kind of look like baby bite marks. You want to do it wherever it attaches to the clay as much as you can. Sometimes it's hard to kind of get in there. All right, so right now this is attached on. The only problem is it doesn't look really nice. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth it out. So I'm going to use a little bit of water on my finger to smooth out the surface here, the edges. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so you can kind of see how I smoothed out the surface and the edges. So I'm going to attach on one more just for good luck. Okay, so remember you're going to score, scratch both areas where you're attaching. You're going to add a little bit of that slip, which in our case is just water, but normally it's a clay water mixture. The goal is to not drown your clay. Last but not least, pull that clay over the seam, just like that. So you want that line to go away where one piece of clay separates from the other. And you want to do it as much as you can. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is smooth it out. Okay, now at this point in time, let's pretend that this is completely my finished thing. So I've attached everything on. The last thing I'm going to want to do before I add my indented texture is I'm going to want to smooth the surfaces of everything. Okay, so I'm going to be mindful of any clay boogers, any chunks of clay. I'm going to really take my time, use maybe a little bit of water in my clay brush and smooth out the surfaces of everything. okay? So let's say this whole thing is smoothed out. I did a really good job smoothing this out here. And at this point, what I can do is start to create as the last and final step. Once everything's attached on, everything's sculpted, everything's smoothed out, I can start to create my indented textures, okay? So these are just pressed into the surface of the clay. You can use any sort of tools in order to do this. And when you create an indented texture, you want it to appear intentional. All right, so let's say that's indented texture 1. Let's say for this one, I want something else. Okay, I really want to use some of my clay tools. Let's try this. The key with the indented textures is you've got to thoughtfully add them. And so I'm thinking about how hard I'm pressing, where I'm putting this. Okay, so I have two different indented textures here. Okay, so I scored, slipped, and smoothed everything on. I smoothed out the surface of everything, and then as a finishing touch, I added my intentional indented textures. These would be things that we would practice before you would add them to make sure that they actually are things that you want to add and that they look good.